Imagination creates reality. Imagination alters reality. Imagination changes around what you will experience in your life if you use it in the right way. In today's inspirational video, I wanted to talk to you about an experience I've had in my past when I had a dream of becoming a filmmaker, specifically a director and actor, but mostly I was focused on being a director first and foremost. Now back then, I have to take you into the past when we're talking about this life experience. It was way back in 2006, but I was 16 years old at the time. However, I had this dream of making a movie, and I was sitting at home. I had nobody that had ever made a movie in my life. I knew nobody. I had no resources, but yet I had a dream. I had a desire to become a filmmaker. So what did I do? Well, the first thing I started doing, and this is all actually subconsciously, it's only looking back on it how I can see how it tied into beautifully in what Neville Goddard would suggest you do, is that every night I would fall asleep, and before falling asleep I would imagine and focus very intensely on what the sort of movie would be about, what sort of movie I wanted to make, what sort of genre, what sort of story. And as I would focus on that every time before falling asleep, after a while I would start getting all these ideas and inspiring concepts going into my consciousness, which then compelled me to write the story, because I figured, if I'm gonna make a movie, I first have to write a story, because otherwise there's no movie to be made. So I spent the whole summer, literally, I'm kid you not, I would be writing throughout the entire night and just sleeping during the day for the most part, or maybe a few hours a day at max, because I was that excited and inspired to work on my story, on this dream that I had in my mind. So that was one of the first concepts that he talks about. You gotta sleep in the feeling of your wish fulfilled. That's exactly what I did. As I started doing that, again, I still had nobody in my life. No actors, no crew members, no cameraman, nobody, no sound man, whatever is needed in order to make a good movie. But I kept working on the dream, and as I did, some really interesting things started to happen to me. First of all, I remember when I went to college later that year, I was sitting in the bus, usually in the morning, always for about an hour and a half. It was a long bus ride, so what are you going to do with your time? Well, most people would do it sitting in the bus, listening to music, or maybe talking to friends. Again, I was actually going to a college where I had no friends that I knew from the past, so I was pretty much a loner during these years. But what I did was, during the bus ride, focus on my movie. I realized now I was walking around with the feeling of my wish fulfilled. Had you asked me that, are you walking around with your feeling of the wish fulfilled right now? Back then I probably would have said, no, I'm just really passionate. I feel this desire. Yeah, I feel a burning sensation through my bones, almost like this is what I really want to work on. This is what I want to dedicate my time on. And again, even though I had nobody that could help me out still to that day, or in that moment of time I should say, I still held the feeling of the wish fulfilled. This is very important right here, because most people, if they don't have the resources right away, they just start to reason, well, there's no point in feeling the wish fulfilled, because how could I ever make my dream a reality? Well, that's what we want to get rid of. That's a mistake we don't want to make. Well, I didn't make that mistake, even though the title says I made one, and we're going to get into that very soon. But every day I would be feeling this wish fulfilled as I was going to school. And I was going to school for photography and filmmaking, so that was already in alignment and in harmony with this bigger dream I had. Well, during classes, during breaks, I kid you not, other people would, gather together and start talking with each other, eating a sandwich or drinking some whatever, Coke or some Pepsi, whatever. It doesn't really matter what they did exactly, but you get the idea. During lunch breaks, people always group together. What did I do? I would get a table, I would be on my own. Again, I would look a little weird to the majority of people there, but I would get a table, I would sit at the table, get out a map with all these documents I had, lay them out in front of me on the table, and that was the first part of my movie script, and I started writing. I started imagining every scene in my mind, from start to finish as time ticked on what I wanted to do. But that was not the only thing I started doing. Looking back at it now, I also started posting online, for example, to places and forums where people were looking to find work in the movie industry, or actors or actresses that wanted to have a chance in the movie industry. I started posting about my project, and it started to spread like wildfire. I kid you not. Like months later, I started with nobody. This is the key part. I started with nobody, with only the desire and with only applying the technique of feeling the feeling of my wish fulfilled. And then over time, more and more people showed up. I would have 100 emails a day almost coming in from people showing interest, both that would be interested in playing a role as an actor and people who would be interested in helping as a crew member, like camera people, even directors and stuff like that. Sound design, the makeup artists, all these people were interested in helping me out in my project, even though I had no money. I had not a cent to me to pay any of them. That's fascinating, isn't it? But these people believed in my dream at the time because I was so passionate about what I was wanting to make. Again, I was completely possessed by the feeling of the wish fulfilled. So as I was working on my script during lunch breaks on college, people would already contact me through email as well about my movie project. And then, as I kept doing that, I started giving auditions. I'd never done that in my life, but I'm the director, I gotta see what sort of actors I want in my movie, right? So the people who wanted to act a role, they would come to a certain location, which again, I didn't have to pay for. It was paid, well, it was actually given to me for free, I suppose, because this is all like based on sponsorship deals. So in return, all these companies and people would get promotion through my movie project by helping me. So it was fascinating to say the least. So I had all these auditions, and I remember one actress coming on for my movie who was actually at the time a major actress. She starred into in a multiple million euro budget movie, so it was a big production. She was the lead actress in that movie, and even she showed up wanting to, or at least show interest in the movie, to perhaps play a role in it. Well, of course, her audition was one of the best out of all the others, because she had enough experience with it and knew what she was doing. So that was already exciting, and I remember always thinking to myself, I have no idea what's going on here, but it's pretty cool. And my dad would come up to me and say also, where did you get all these people? How did you find all these people that helped you out, that are helping you out? Because you're not paying them or anything, right? And I said, yeah, I don't know, they just come to me ever since I started sharing that I wanted to make a movie. Now this is very important. See, this is a very good experience on how a dream can become a reality. As time ticks on, more stuff took on shape. We actually started shooting a few scenes from the introduction of the movie. This was in 2007, so there was almost a year, I would say, between me getting the desire of becoming a filmmaker and actually manifesting all sorts of people that were helping me out to get it done. Because we had some scenes in the forest and I wanted to make them at night, so it's pretty dark in the forest. So we found somebody there that could have a sort of light source going on in the forest. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know the English terms for that, but it was like a big lamp that you can put down somewhere. It was hooked up to a generator in the forest, and then it created this light so we could shoot the scenes. And there was somebody who was doing the makeup, because it was a horror movie, a vampire movie, imagine that, right? So people looked a little peculiar, but all these people showed up after they heard about my movie project and believed in it enough that they wanted to support me. But I think it was also important that I was constantly walking around with the feeling of my wish fulfilled. I believed enough in myself and my dream that I dared to tell people what I was going to do and what I needed their help for. This is very important as well, because I made it so clear in my mind what my movie was going to be about that I knew exactly what kind of people I would need in order to make this a reality. And then when I approached people that could offer that sort of help, they way faster they would be willing to help me out as well, because it was clear to them what we're working towards. And this is an issue that most people can have, is that their dreams are not clear enough, and therefore they can't not induce others to help them along the way either, because it's all still too vague. This is why we want to make our dreams crystal clear, and they become crystal clear automatically as you keep yourself focused on the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Now, where did the big mistake come in? What mistake did I make that many people make themselves? Well, what happened was that after a while of creating these scenes and working on I called it a movie teaser, so we could even send it to film festivals, because there was a Dutch film festival representative that was interested, or at least open to check out my project once it was done. This thing would have potentially gotten very huge if I kept going. But you see, what happened in my private life, as I've talked about in videos in the past briefly, is that in my private life I had a mom that was very depressed and suicidal, and she was doing these suicide attempts as I was working on this dream. And you have to put this into context. I was 17 years old at the time, So when all these events were taking place, obviously I lost my focus on what I should be, doing concerning the movie, because it's not an easy situation to be in. But this is exactly what Neville would say as well. You're gonna focus on your feeling of the wish fulfilled while disregarding the evidence of your senses. Well, something that happens outside of yourself is always something that comes in through the senses. That is where I made my big mistake. Is that where you're making a mistake perhaps to this day? Because this is where most people screw it all up. They have a dream, but then things happen in their worlds, in their circumstances, that throws them off track. But if we can keep the focus on the feeling of the wish fulfilled, on our dreams, as I did with the movie project, then stuff might have happened totally different for me. It might have gone a totally different route, because what ultimately occurred was that because of those issues in my private life, because I let them sort of infect, I would almost say, my consciousness, slowly but surely I lost focus on my dream. And it's exactly how Neville described it in his own books and lectures. Once the consciousness is taken away from a certain state of mind, from a certain goal, then the goal or activity or the manifestation falls away from your world. That is exactly what happened. And it's pretty interesting, because after my focus started to get less and less condensed into this movie project, that is when all the elements of that dream slowly but surely started to fade away. And was kind of bad. I felt really bad about it, because in a way I was letting down a lot of people that wanted to help me make this movie, and I sort of vanished out of nowhere as well, because I didn't know how to explain this situation to them either at the time, because it was kind of difficult for me to tell them, well, I have some issues in my private life with somebody that wants to take their life, so it sounds kind of super dramatic for them as well, of course, which it technically is, but it is what it is. At the time I couldn't do anything about it. But now looking back at it, this incident is one of those reasons why I stumbled upon this whole study of metaphysics, because it was, I think, around 2007 that I started to take these teachings serious. And it's only looking back now on reflection, I can see many times in my life that I've used these techniques subconsciously, and they actually worked really well. But you see, if people are not aware of this, if you're a person who is constantly struggling to make things happen, you might want to analyze, are you allowing your circumstances to control your mind? Because if so, that is the reason why you're not progressing, or at least why it feels like you're stuck, because you don't have to be stuck, and essentially you're never really stuck as long as you keep the idea alive within your mind. As long as you keep yourself focused on where you want to go, you'll automatically be compelled to keep going there, even though you might have days or perhaps weeks where things seem a little stagnant and not moving along. You yourself as a person, as an individual, constantly be compelled to do at least something about it sooner or later, so you don't really have to worry about it. The only thing you have to worry about is to keep your focus on the objective that is to be achieved. So if you do that, maybe you'll be able to make the film that I was unable to make at the time. But if I ever want to make a film again, at least now I know to keep my focus completely aimed at it, as I've done so far with other projects ever since then. With my music, with my YouTube channels, with my writings. I never allowed any situation to stop me ever again. So it was a great life lesson in the end. With that being said, dear viewer, never forget that we are the dreamers.